Hello everyone, good afternoon and welcome to your first Q&A session of Mental Health Awareness Week. My name is Jamie, I'm one of the Vitality coaches. If you attended our workshop earlier in the day, you might have seen me there, but we have a special guest today. He's been the man of the day actually. He delivered the session earlier this morning. He also delivered mindfulness for us at lunchtime. Henri joins us to be the expert this afternoon. Henri, how are you getting on?
I'm all right. I think people will be sick of me by the end of the week. I'm almost certain they might be sick of me already. So, yeah.
Correct. Absolutely correct with that assumption. No, but good to have you. Hopefully not too fatigued. So everyone watching, if this is the first session that you've attended, welcome. Basically, we're here just to give you our time to answer any questions that you have. So whether it's related to the workshop that we delivered this morning, or if it's any question related to mental health and wellbeing, Henri, I'm pretty sure you're happy to take any questions. You can signpost, but there's nothing off limits, right?
Nothing's off limits. No, absolutely. I think it might be nice to introduce myself. So if you haven't seen me before, I'm sure you have seen me somewhere before. I've been working in the field for about 10 years, started working with athletes on decision making, confidence, concentration, that kind of thing. And then I've lectured at a few different universities and also just sort of helped everyday folk with everyday challenges. So that's what brings me to Vitality. That's what brings me in front of you guys today, hopefully answering some of your questions. Jamie, over to you.
Cool, perfect. So we're going to get straight into it. But for anyone watching, wherever you are, whether you're on Facebook or on YouTube, just put your comments or questions in the box, whether it's below or to the side. We'll see them and we can bring them up on screen. But we have had a lot of questions which have been pre-registered. So we're going to get straight into it. So Henri, this morning's workshop was about mental health awareness. And the one thing that came up throughout was about stigma. And what we kind of explored during that session was the fact that stigma wasn't necessarily always relating to other people's perception. It was often relating to our own. So the first question for you today is, how can you overcome your own stigma to seek help?
So it's a really interesting question, because if you consider that sort of where your own stigma has come from, that would be the first thing I would ask. So where has this idea that you can't ask for help come from? Where has the stigma around mental health in your own mind come from? Now, we mentioned it earlier. We mentioned media. We mentioned the messages that we have growing up, conditioning. So it's not uncommon for people to find it difficult to reach out for help. And so you've got that self-stigma, which is, perhaps stopping you from accessing support, because fundamentally we have a fear of how we might be received, how that might be received, a fear of judgment from others. And again, a fear that, that stigma is going to be reinforced, or that there might be a consequence that, is negative. So fundamentally, it's making peace with whatever outcome. And what I would say is that if you're struggling, if you're finding things difficult, the majority, I haven't met anybody yet in 10 years, I haven't met anybody working in this field who has regretted reaching out. And yet I've met many people who wish they had reached out prior to when they did. So that's what I would say in that sense. There is going to be, I understand if, there's some hesitancy, there's some tentativeness, but find somebody that you can reach out to. Samaritans are also a really good place to reach out to as well. They're open 24/7. You can speak to somebody there, and they're really skilled at having these conversations. So yeah, you're not alone in the way that you're feeling. Absolutely.
We often say about physical well-being, don't we, that you don't regret doing something which is good for you. So like exercise or eating a healthy meal. I don't think there's an occasion whereby you'll do one of those things and after think, oh, I feel so much worse for doing that. And I guess that's the stigma thing around mental well-being as well, isn't it? That you probably will feel better, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we can't say like 100%, of course,
Yeah.
but fundamentally, the hardest and most difficult things to do, generally speaking, are the right things to do. Now that's a really broad statement there, but where there's indecision, where there's, oh, I'm not sure about it, generally speaking, that's an indication that it's a good thing to do. So yeah, 100%, I would say.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So if we move on, I think that the other thing that we, again, this morning's workshop was all about awareness. We've had a few questions, which is about identifying mental health issues in ourselves. And
Mm.
then after we've answered this, we're going to supporting others. But are there signs and symptoms that we should be aware of within ourselves that might mean that our mental health needs a little bit of support or we're not quite in the right place?
Yeah, so I mean, fundamentally, I would always recommend increasing self-awareness to everybody. And what I mean by that is really increasing your awareness about your thoughts and feelings. And it's kind of like, if we take like that physical metaphor again, you know when you've got a pain. You know, you might know, oh, I've got a bit of a back pain. And the only reason that you know you've got a back pain is because you know what it's like to not have a back pain.
Yeah.
So you see something that's a little bit off, you see something that's a little bit wrong. And sometimes it's a little bit more difficult. I'd say, especially for men, generally a little bit less aware of our thoughts and feelings.
Mhm.
Massive, what's the word? Sweeping statement there. But certainly, the more that we're able to understand our thoughts and notice our thoughts, and the more that we're able to understand and notice our feelings when they arrive, and also when they disappear, the more we'll start to notice things that are a little bit out of place. In terms of what we can be looking out for in ourselves, um, checking checking our sleeping patterns. Sleeping patterns is a big one. Um, Thought patterns are a big one. Are you frustrated? Is there a frustration in you? Is there a lot of thought happening, a lot of cognitive activity? Look at appetite. Are there changes to your appetite? In terms of sleep, you might be sleeping less, you might be sleeping more. So these are types of things that we can really to think about, start to consider. And where things start to become really intrusive on our daily enjoyment of life, that's when we might want to start having a look at either making some more time for ourselves and the things that we enjoy, or also exploring what our options might be. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. So if we just focus a little bit more on ourselves,
Hmm.
uh, lockdown still going on. Most people
Hmm.
still working from home. So
Yeah.
there are quite a few questions about anxiety associated with returning to offices, but also in the meantime, um, when you're isolated and on your own for long periods of time, how can you best support yourself through those situations? Because we spoke earlier about when, this last year has been tough. So
Mm.
therefore, that doesn't necessarily mean you have a mental health issue. It means that the last year has been tough and it's fine to acknowledge that. So safeguarding yourself when you're isolated a lot, working alone, are there things that we can be doing, or is it again about acceptance and awareness?
I think that's a lovely word to use. Acceptance is really, really great word. But what I would say is that you've been through the worst of it at the moment. Like you've
Mhm.
uh, trust, I think, is a key word here, a key concept, because trust the fact that you've been through, as we say, probably the worst of what's to come. But also trust in the fact that you know deep down inside, you know what you need. You know what you need in terms of what level of socialization, what level of socializing, sorry, what level of, you know, getting out to the pub, or getting out with your friends, or what levels of exercise. Now, nutrition, looking after kind of the key elements of nutrition, sleep, exercise is a good starting point always. But yeah, really trust yourself and accept that this is towards the end of the journey. There is still going to be anxiety, there is still going to be stress when we're back to normal. So understanding your emotions, understanding your thoughts, understanding that you don't always have to be at 100% in order to be okay, that's fine as well. So,
So just to build on that, we've had a
mm,
specific question, which is what are the best actions to take at home while having a
mm,
breakdown? Now, there's no more information than that. We sort of discussed about whether breakdown was the right words, but
yeah.
what we kind of decided was that was kind of like when you hit what feels like rock bottom, what is it that you do at that point?
So it's difficult to say. It's going to be different for different people.
Yeah.
It really is a case of sometimes it might be just sitting with it and enduring. Sometimes it might be, that, um, again, what I would say is trust in your own wisdom here, and trust in your own body, and trust that you will know what the right thing is. Now, that might be spending days on end in bed. It might be eating junk food for a couple of weeks. But fundamentally, like, you're going to know what the best thing for you is. And what I would say is trust in that. Don't trust in me giving advice in that situation, that without knowing the person. Whoever's asking that question, you're the expert in you. And that goes for everybody watching as well. You're the expert in what works for you. And it's really important to trust that. Really do trust that.
And I guess if it's anything whereby people are having harmful thoughts or anything like that, reach for 999 or other support. Like, is that
Yeah.
the first place to go?
Speak to someone. Samaritans are a great place to speak to. Yeah,
Okay,
they've got a lot of supportive people there to talk to you, about challenges that you might be having. So yeah, absolutely.
cool. So reach out again.
Mm,
So again, a lot of it has been around supporting others.
mm,
And I wondered, looking at these questions, we've all done that thing where you say, oh, it's a question for a friend. And I
mm,
wonder if it refers to that stigma whereby people are asking for a friend, but are they actually
mm,
wanting to know for themselves? Who knows? But there's been a lot around how to support others. So one of the questions is, once you have identified poor mental health in others, how do you go about offering support or providing advice?
mm. Good question. And so the first thing I always say, and I'm going to sound like a broken record here, is prioritize yourself. Really make sure that you're recharging your own batteries. But then if you know somebody who is struggling, just make sure that olive branch is always there. Make sure that they know that they can come to you if they need somebody to speak to. Drop in, check in with them now and again, see how they're getting on. But fundamentally, what is really important here is that it's up to the person themselves to reach out and speak to you. There's a tendency, when we identify that somebody is perhaps struggling, but also, when I've trained mental health first aiders as well, that you want to fix people, you want to help people immediately, you want to have a 30-minute conversation and be the superhero, be
Mm,
Superman who rescues them. And that isn't realistic. It's not realistic. It's one of the toughest pills to swallow, is that you might not be able to fix them, you might not be able to help them, and it's up to them to seek the help and support when it's best for them. And so all you can do is just continue to be there, continue supporting them, as best as you can.
And I think that, yeah, when you are there and supporting, there might be a time whereby that person comes to you and asks for your help, and you might be able to provide it. But then
Yeah.
after that, how do you better maintain those relationships with those people? So it would be very easy, I'm sure, to try and push them to do more if they don't feel like it, or to say things like, "Oh, cheer up," or things
Mm.
that can be actually quite the opposite. So how do you maintain a healthy relationship with someone who is struggling and it's not their fault
With
necessarily?
empathy,
Mm,
it can be a real challenge, and but also know that you're probably not going to get it right all the time,
yeah,
and be kind to yourself as well, because I don't get it right all the time. Nobody gets it right all the time. So we can do our best to support people, be kind to ourselves, and know that you're not going to maybe get it right all the time. But yeah, fundamentally, as long as you're there, supporting in the best way that you can, and essentially, and for me, that's just being there. That is
yeah.
literally just being there. That's enough. And in most cases. So yeah, that's what I would say.
It's funny. I've been in situations in the past where I know that a friend's been going through a tough time,
Mm,
and I'll drop them a text and say, do you want to go up some food or something?
mm,
And they'll come back and say like no straight away,
mm,
and then I say, well, let me know if you change your mind.
mm,
2 hours later, they usually be like, do you know what?
mm, mm,
Yeah,
mm,
okay, and they will. And I think it's like you say, it's about being open,
mm.
but being empathetic rather than if they say no, you say, oh, come on, or hassle. They have to do it on their own time, don't they?
Absolutely, and you don't take that personally either.
Yeah.
That's the key thing, is that you don't take that rejection personally, and you allow that person to, the ball's in their court the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when you have young kids and they have a tantrum about something. It's not the fact that they're not rational because their brains aren't developed. It's not their fault at all. But I think that's, yeah, I like what you said there about it's not personal. I think we could
Mm.
probably all take that a little bit further beyond this topic as well. Okay, so a bit more specific. I suffer from PTSD and GAD.
Hmm.
So post-traumatic stress disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. Is that right?
General, yeah, perfect.
Okay, cool. I would love to hear how to deal with return to work anxiety and how to plan for it with your employer. Massive one.
Okay.
Um, Loads of people have been asking about returning to the offices and
Mm,
things like that.
mm. So the first thing is, I would say that it's really important, more important than ever, to tell your employer that you have GAD and PTSD, mainly because that allows the employer to understand that they can make some reasonable um, adjustments to your return to work. This is really huge. Your employer doesn't have to really do anything like legally, but there is a duty of care that they will act in the most to provide a healthy workplace for you, so they can do that, I hope. And so it's really going to be in communication with your employer what the best thing to do is. Again, what I would say is that getting as much information as you can about um, the safety mechanisms that are in place from your employer, the flexibility that's in place, is going to be really important. But what I would say with anxiety is that it will always take. There will always be the next challenge. There will always be the next challenge. So this challenge is no different to any challenges that you've experienced in the past. So in terms of that return to work, yes, it's the next challenge that you've got to face. But what I would say is that when you reflect on the challenges that you've experienced in the past that you've managed to navigate successfully, that's all this is. This is another challenge for you to navigate successfully, and working closely with your employer is going to be the best way to do that.
I like what you said about challenge because I've often done that whereby it's not in as much of a, I guess, serious way. Like if I've had injuries in the past, I've always thought of it as a challenge and I'm definitely not going to lose. Like I'm
Mm,
competitive and I need to back myself. And so, yeah, it's a challenge, but that doesn't mean you can't overcome it. And on the note of PTSD, someone has also said how can I overcome an event in the past that has been haunting me for a long time?
mm,
And again, there might be things in the last year. There's a lot of questions that we'll come on to in the second half, which are all about workplaces. But I guess this one is specifically about one event that's been haunting this person. It could
mm.
be in anything.
So I would recommend. Hmm, there's a couple of things I would recommend. Um, I would recommend the mindfulness sessions on Mondays. I think they might be helpful. Fundamentally, where you have a thought, a memory that has been constant, you're essentially constantly bringing into your awareness, into your consciousness. It could be a trauma, for example. There's ways, there's trauma focused therapies that are um, specialist at this type of challenge. I wouldn't say I'm a specialist in this type of challenge. So I would say that talking therapies can be incredibly helpful. Cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnotherapy can be incredibly helpful when it comes to dealing with past events. But equally, understanding your thoughts and feelings, the process of your thoughts and feelings, can be incredibly helpful. And you may get some insight on that via mindfulness as well, via meditation. So I'd say there's lots of different options out there. What I would say is that you've identified this and you can see that it's causing you some distress. There are definitely options out there in terms of how you then want to take the next steps towards getting some clarity on how to deal with it. So I would say, yeah, absolutely look at some self-study online. There's lots of stuff on YouTube and stuff. We've got our Partners Together All as well. You can sign up for Together All, Headspace, just to kind of get a little bit of a better understanding of your own thoughts and feelings. But then also talking therapies may be a good experience to go for as well.
Cool. Nice one. More on stress and work. I'm soon to
Okay.
be a first-time parent.
Mm,
Great news, but
congratulations.
yeah, it's cool. But in the same way, there's challenges. And what are some of the ways that I can manage the stress of work with the stress of a new baby?
So
Just get used to not sleeping and stuff. I think.
exactly right. So firstly, like, be realistic. Be realistic, and try not to set expectations too high. We're doing a session on stress and anxiety specifically on Wednesday, and there's two things that I think are really common with stress, common causes of stress, like, let's say. The first one is to try to fit too much activity into too little time. When we try and do too much, we're having work, we've got kids, we've got trying to lose weight, we're trying to learn a language, we're trying to take up snowboarding, we've got all these different things, different hobbies, different ways of taking our time. We're spreading ourselves far too thin, and that can be a real cause for stress. The second one is where expectations of life don't meet the reality of life. So what I would say with this, we know, that you're probably not going to sleep very well. um, I say that prepare for the worst, essentially, and then anything else on top of that is a bonus. But yeah, that's, again, without knowing the nuts and bolts of the situation, I think that's generally as good a broad piece of advice I can give that person.
Sure.
Mm.
So if we now move on again back to supporting others,
Mm-hmm.
how do you deal with a situation where you know a colleague who is feeling really down and you've tried to help them by talking to them, but you've done it a few times and they end up feeling low and then you get demoralized after the conversation? So
Mm.
they've put colleague, but I guess this is with anyone. Like there's a fine line between hassling and trying to be supportive.
Yeah, well, I think I get the impression I get with that question is that you're trying and you're trying and you're trying, and that's affecting my mental well-being. The fact that I'm trying and this person isn't accepting accept accepting of help. And what I would say is, can you try and just separate those two things? It's similar to that when we talked about being Superman, coming in with the rescue. um, your role is not to help, is not to rescue them. Your role is not to um, to be Superman. Your role is to be there and to be supportive, and it's up to the person that you're speaking to get to the point where they're willing and able to receive help. So that can be a really difficult, yeah, it can be really difficult pill to swallow at times. As much as you want to help people, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't get the water to drink. It's basically that same principle. And I've experienced it many times when working with people. People say that they want help, but then you're asking them to do certain things, and actually they're not willing to
Mm.
change their behaviors. So you have seen the same thing, Jamie, in physical activity and nutrition. People saying that they want to lose weight, but then it comes to, well, actually you're going to have to change what you do. Oh, I don't want to lose weight that much. I want
Yeah.
to lose weight, but I want to still do all the things that I want to do. It's a similar principle, absolutely similar
And in
principle.
and in that scenario, I generally these days the approach to it is so different. Like I see anyone as a problem solving scenario, but most people know how to be healthy in terms of their physical and nutritional well-being. They don't need someone to tell them what to eat. They don't need someone to tell them they need to exercise.
Mm,
I think it all comes down to the state of their mind and whether
mhm.
they're ready for that change. It's very simple, the formula for losing weight, and
Yeah,
I don't think it's as simple to look after your mental well-being, but you know when there's things that you're doing which aren't good for you, and you know the things that can help you. And I think you've got to go through a time period, and then there will be a point at which you say, right, now is the time for me to change. But if you're not there, it'll be the classic circular kind of
mhm.
process. You're going to come back to that point where you have good times and you have bad, but maybe that's just part of your experience of life.
Absolutely. You've
um
got to be ready for change. This is the thing. And the other thing is that what I would say to that is that people fear the unknown,
mm,
and people are familiar with the known. So the idea, even if the unknown is preferred to the known, they will still maintain the known. They will still maintain the status quo because it's known, it's not uncertain. And then you're asking somebody to jump into the unknown. So that might be something also to consider, is that it's a lot harder for many people to jump into that unknown, depending on how long they've had this experience that they're having as well.
Yeah, I've heard people that have started their own businesses as an example, whereby they've started a new business and someone has said to them, that was brave, or oh, that was a risk. And they've kind of responded with, for me, it was more of a risk to stay doing what I was
Yeah.
doing because I wasn't enjoying that. So why? And I guess it's similar. If it's a change, but you're not happy with where you are, it's not a risk, because if you end up not being happy with where you go, you're in the same place, and at least
Absolutely.
you tried. Okay, final couple, because we're
Yeah.
blabbering on as usual.
As always.
So this next one is interesting. It's kind of in a few parts, and I don't know whether all of it is relevant, but I'll just read it out to you. So, what are the benefits of letting the employer know you suffer from one of the common disorders? I'm going through alcohol abuse. Can you recommend any help, any sessions, or any workshops? Is it anything to do with self-sabotage? So there's kind of three parts there. I don't know how you want to tackle that.
Okay, so yeah, I think obviously it's going to, again, depending on your employer, it's going to really depend how they receive that information. I would hope 100% that they're understanding, but having that conversation, I think, is you've got more to gain, I would hope, than more to lose. I would hope that they want to support you in your journey. In terms of alcohol abuse, I would say, right, okay, you've got your AA programs, your local AA programs. I would, again, always speak to Samaritans. They're always going to be there for you, so you can always call them 24/7. In terms of specific courses, again, it would be looking at the same kinds of things. You mentioned, Jamie, that you're not sure if it's as simple, and for me, it is kind of simple. It is the same things. It's looking after the fundamentals, but then also understanding the relationship between your thoughts and your feelings and what's going on and what's sort of triggering different behaviors, and what are our expectations and what are our beliefs around the different behaviors that we engage in. So again, there's lots of different ways that you can start to explore that, and mindfulness might be a way to start. And the what I would say is that the Togetherall online learning hub may be another way to start getting some clarity on different perspectives and different ways of seeing your personal situation. What I would say is that you're not alone in experiencing what you're going through. People have experienced exactly, not maybe nuts and bolts exactly what you're going through, but certainly the psychological process, the dependency. People have experienced that and they have got through it. And that means that you can do exactly the same. Like, there's nothing special about those people and not special about you. You've got exactly the same facilities. You've got exactly the same opportunities to change, if that is indeed what you want to do. So the support is available there, if you want to reach out and grab it, for sure.
Cool. Perfect. And the final question is a two-parter again, so it's the final two questions. Can anxiety disorders be linked with other conditions such as eating disorders? And in your experience, can certain everyday foods increase the physical effects of mental health issues?
So first part of the question is, I would say, generally speaking, always the eating disorder, the obsessive compulsive disorder is I'm trying to get the language right here, is a result of the anxiety disorder. So what you have with anxiety and what you have with, um, severe stress as well, excessive stress, is a whole bunch of thinking. And a lot of the time, our thinking is consumed, our attention is consumed by the things that are out of our control. So especially with anxiety, what you're looking at is the future, and you're always catastrophizing. Generally, this is very general. You're always catastrophizing about the things that might go wrong, the things that could go wrong. Now, one of the results of that is to focus in on the things that I can control in this moment. One of those things that you can control is what you're doing with your body. So what you're putting into your body. Again, like, for example, addiction would be the same. So addiction to any kind of substances, addiction to exercise as well. That's one there. Addiction to thinking, addiction to social media. All of these things will be things that distract us temporarily from this uncomfortable feeling that we might be having. So yeah, I would 100% say that they're very linked and tied in. With pretty strongly. In terms of diet that might affect your general mental well-being, and certainly with anxiety, I think caffeine is generally something to avoid. But I'm not huge on that. I guess the key thing to think about is your energy levels. So I would be looking at sugar, like refined carbohydrates. Generally, I like, and generally, Jamie, they're fine, but I would say that if you're having sort of ups and downs of energy, I think that can be quite a tricky thing to manage if you're also having difficulties as well. So that would be something that I would be mindful of. But fundamentally, you want to have good nutrition. You want to get all the nuts and bolts that you want.
Yeah, I would broaden it up completely and just say if you're if you're in an imbalance with your nutrition, then that probably links out more broadly than that. If you're not eating properly, is it because you're stressed? Is it because you don't have time? I think you could actually look at your nutrition as an indicator as to how your mental well-being is. So they are linked, but I think that your mental well-being probably determines and dictates your nutritional intake. So there's not going to be foods, Henry made, I think, one good point in that caffeine can definitely accelerate these feelings. But apart from that, there's not going to be one food specifically which is going to have a huge impact. It's more about, are you managing that whole area well? Henry, you've done great work today. Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Tell us what's on the program for tomorrow.
Tomorrow we have at 10:30 how to support other people effectively. We have yoga at 12:30. And then we have our colleague Melissa doing the questions at 3 p.m. So please do join us tomorrow for another full day.
Exactly. Yeah, get involved with the program. We've got the whole week lined up. We've got some really good events going on, and we're just here to help. So share far and wide. If you're not a Vitality member, mental well-being is mental well-being. It doesn't matter. We just want to support as many people as we can. And Henry started Monday super strong, so good work. And we look forward to more tomorrow.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye-bye.